Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest on the New York Jets and the NFL Draft. We have a lot coming at you today. I apologize for this video being a little bit late. It's been a hectic week, but you know this is my favorite time of year. You know one of my favorite events of the whole entire year is the Senior Bowl. It's one of my favorites. And look, I think it's more important than the NFL Draft. Scouting combine. Look, I know the scouting combine is a great spectacle. It's awesome to watch, but in the grand scheme of everything, when I'm doing this evaluation, I look at the Senior Bowl because, again, you have guys wearing pads, you have guys doing football drills and football activities, and not running around in their underwear in Indianapolis. But I think that this was a really important week for the New York Jets. It was also very important, too, to have Jeff Ulbrich, who was getting rave reviews down in Mobile as one of the coaches for the national team. I think it is incredibly important for the Jets, especially in this year where everything is on the line, to really have a great draft. And the last time the Jets did have a hand in the Senior Bowl, when they had a major part of the staff, don't forget that was probably the best draft that Joe Douglas had back in 2022. There is a lot to get into today. This is basically a combination of some of my favorite standouts for the Senior Bowl, but guys who I think the New York Jets will target. And there are a lot of them. And I just want to put this little preface in here. If you're joining us during the live stream, would love to hear your thoughts. But if you're joining us after and you have comments, I want to put this with a little bit of grain of salt. The way I attacked this list is, again, I looked at the first round and the picks the Jets have. The Jets don't have a second round pick. So a lot of guys that I like in the second round, some early day round 3, late round 2, I tended to exclude from this list because as of right now, the Jets, of course, they don't have that second round pick. So I'm operating the Jets have the 10th pick, their third round pick, but primarily I'm looking at a lot of day 3 guys because the Jets have a plethora of day 3 picks there. That's where their money is right now. Now, look, things can change. Maybe the Jets trade back. I've looked at a couple of those options and a couple of those prospects where they can gain an extra pick, whether it's in round 2 or round 3. And I do think the Jets have to be creative to find solutions in order to attack this offseason. But there was a couple of standouts that I really liked in the Senior Bowl this year who I think can help the Jets not only in the short term, but the long term. So without further ado, let's dive into it. These are a couple of I think I have about 12 prospects that I really think the Jets should target and could be members of the New York Jets. So let's get started and let's dive right into it with our first prospect. And that is Sam Hartman, the quarterback out of Notre Dame. And I really liked him, and I think he fits what the Jets are looking for. The Jets, I think, want to get a developmental quarterback on day 3 of the draft. And Hartman projects to be a day 3 pick because you look, he's 24, he's going to be 25 next year. I do think being that 5th-year senior and having that higher age, especially because of the COVID years, is going to push him down boards. And I get that you don't really want 25, but this isn't like a 28-year-old Brandon Weeden. There are some limitations in his game that I think are going to push him down. He doesn't have the biggest arm, has trouble getting it to that third level and pushing it down the field. He sometimes gets into trouble when he tries to push it down the field. But here are the positives I really like with him. I think he could be a great fit in this West Coast scheme. He's got really underrated mobility. He had a couple of really nice runs throughout this camp. And you look at him at that first and second level, incredibly accurate thrower, really efficient at getting the ball out, and especially in the short passing game. And in this system that I do think Saleh wants to run, and that once Aaron Rodgers leaves and probably Hackett goes with him, they're going to look to implement the West Coast style system. And it works for guys that make quick decisions, are accurate, and are able to get the ball quickly. And that really plays to the strengths of Hartman. Smart kid, can get the ball quick. And I like the athleticism. And here's the thing, a little bit undersized at 6'1", but watching him play and watching him throw in this prospect, you know who he really reminded me of a lot? And I know a lot of Jet fans are going to get a kick out of this. He reminded me a lot of Mike White. Like, he's a shorter version of Mike White, a guy that probably doesn't really impress you athletically, but surprisingly mobile for a guy of his size, and also was really highly efficient and good at getting the football out. So overall, I think he would be a very good choice for the Jets, especially on day 3. But the Jets want to get a little bit greedier and go day 2. Spencer Rattler could be someone that's on their radar. And look, 2 years ago, when we came into the season, there was talks of Spencer Rattler could potentially being one of the first quarterbacks off the board if he came out early. Obviously, it didn't go well in Oklahoma. He transferred to South Carolina where he had a good year. But Spencer Rattler was, to me, the most consistent and best quarterback this entire camp. And I know Michael Penix is going to get a lot of pub, especially that he said he wouldn't mind learning behind Aaron. But look, the Jets need to make a splash in the first round and get an impact player. If they somehow get a second round pick or a third round pick, or he's hanging around there mid round 2, round 3, I would highly look into getting him because look, Senior Bowl MVP. I was impressed with the arm talent. He has ability to make throws to all 3 levels. 23 years old. And look, he's a project. The biggest thing with Rattler is he struggles with pressure and decision making. But when you look at just the toolbox, when you look at just the athleticism, the arm talent, the size, the build, he is a guy that when you talk about sitting and developing a quarterback, you want to bet on the guy that's got the high upside, the guy that's got the mobility, the size, the arm. And to me, he is someone that is not ready for the NFL right now, but needs to sit for a year or two. What does that sound like? That sounds like a perfect situation for the Jets. He'd be someone that I would really love to see him here on the Jets and sit for a year or two. Thought he played incredibly well, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious to see how Ulbrich views him, how Ulbrich, especially going up defensively against him, saw him progress, especially the pressures. So Ulbrich could probably give some really good feedback on this. But look, Spencer Rattler is someone that I do think definitely improved his stock. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick this year, but a day 2 pick, and again, I know the Jets only have one, but if they feel he can develop as that franchise quarterback, and don't forget too, like if we were to rewind the clocks to the fall before his year in Oklahoma, we were talking about him maybe even being the first quarterback off the board. So there's a lot to like here with Spencer Rattler. I know that there's going to be some detractors, but as a project for the Jets, I think he would be a perfect guy on day 2 to target. Now, this one might be a little bit trickier because he had such a great week, but Austin Booker, the edge out of Kansas, and I hate to say this because I do think there's a good chance that Huff is not on the Jets next season. And because of that, they need to find another pass rusher. And I do think Booker, there's a chance he could be there on day 3 because you look at how much the offense is emphasized. You always see day 2 talents for defense falling into day 3. Jets are at the top of day 3. And Booker, to me, could be sitting there. He's an intriguing prospect. Look, he only played 254 snaps, but watching him all week, he has a great toolbox that I think that this defensive staff would love to work with. And look, if there's a project, I don't feel as comfortable on the offense, but the defensive coaching staff, I do think can maximize the talent. And he's got a really good speed move. He's got good burst off the edge. He can win in multiple ways where you see some guys, they have to just win with power. You see other guys, they have to win with just their speed. He can do a little bit of everything. I think he's an intriguing prospect and could be a very nice sub package next year where he becomes that specialty edge rusher on third down, good burst. I think that this is a fun prospect the Jets would love to get. And I get it. Jet fans, they don't want to hear about it. They want Huff back. They want the defensive line. But we have to operate that there's a chance he's not going to be back. And if that's the case, the Jets are still going to have to address this pass rush. And I think Austin Booker would be an intriguing way to do that and a very good way to do that here on day 3, potentially. My next person, so I know we talked a lot about the defense. Now let's go back to the offense. Ricky Pearsall from Florida. This is a loaded wide receiver class. So I do think the good thing for the Jets is if they want a wide receiver, you can get someone really good in round 3. I mean, you look at Tank Dell, there's a couple great examples from last year. But Pearsall, to me, like when you're looking for a complement potential to Garrett Wilson, I think he could be that guy where he's not the flashiest, but he is just a solid chain mover. He's a good possession receiver. He fits that bill as a number 2 receiver. And look, what's the best thing I love about him, and I think Jet fans will love about him? He doesn't drop the football. Al Lazar's the number 2 last year, led the league in drops. You look at him, 147 pass attempts last year, 3 drops the entire year. Smooth route runner, can attack all 3 levels. He's an immediate upgrade in this wide receiver rotation. And look, maybe not immediate next year, see the number 2, but I think he's got the potential to be a wide receiver 2 in this league. And if you compare him with Garrett Wilson, that could be a great 1-2 punch going forward down the line. So I know we talked offense. Let's go back to defense. And again, I understand people don't love this, but here's the thing: the Jets want to win with the defensive line. They want to build with their edges. And the biggest thing, too, is once again, if Huff is gone, they're going to have to get creative. And look, one of the kids I really liked this week down in Mobile was Eric Watts. He's the edge rusher out of UConn. And they have to find creative ways to win. And you also want to have different types of personnel on that defensive line. And the funny thing was, Watts was a late add to the Senior Bowl. But man, like you look at guys, there's stuff to work with. He's 6'5, 277 pounds. He is an absolute monster. In Mobile, he's shown that he could win with that power. I mean, he was pancaking some of the best offensive linemen in this whole showcase. And surprisingly, it wasn't just the power. He's showing nice bend for a guy of his size. This was someone that was maybe a borderline undrafted player, but I think he's worked himself into being a day 3 consideration, probably between round 5 and 7. And look, while I get the production at UConn wasn't great, you can see he has great tools. He has the size. And look, this is someone that the Jets want versatility. Maybe he's someone that could kick inside a defensive tackle, maybe be a rotational guy. I mean, Michael Clemens kind of similar in their size and their builds. But look, you need to find creative ways, especially if you lose Huff, and getting a guy like Watts on round 6 or 7 to help improve the pass rush and getting someone that can win with just pure power is someone that I do think the Jets have to consider. And look, I really liked it. And I went back and looked at this tape from UConn. It actually was pretty solid, and he's got pretty good bend for guys. And now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, why are you having a running back, Dylan Lobb from UNH? And look, I know the running back position isn't the biggest need for this Jet team, but Lobb to me was one of my favorite prospects all week. He fits the modern game. And look, he was the best pass catching running back in Mobile. Unbelievable route runner. And this whole week, he was uncoverable. They had him lying up all over the field, created amazing separation. And when you put that running back label next to him, it's basically because he's a running back, but he was lining up as a receiver. He's a versatile weapon. I could see him being a great number 2 in this system, especially on passing downs. But you look at him. This is someone that could be a nice addition. The Jets need weapons on this offense. He was a record-breaking pass catcher in college, and I know it wasn't at the high D1 level. But the thing I also look at Labe too, and I do think I would consider with other teams the next level is, yes, he is a running back, but he's an unbelievable pass catcher. Could he become a every down slot receiver, or could you use him as a slot receiver? Look, the Jets need some slot receiver help. I could see him being a versatile weapon. Now, again, I don't love the creativity of this offense. I'm not sure if they could maximize him, but he's an intriguing piece. And as great as Breece Hall was last year, I do think the Jets want to spell him at times, and Labe would be a nice piece to do that. All right. I know a lot of people are saying, come on, you're talking about all the flash, you're talking about all the glitz. All right, let's get to the beef. Let's get to the offensive line. Tyler Guyton in Oklahoma. And look, I think that we know that Joe Douglas loves his measurables. And when you look at Guyton, his measurables, 6'7", 318 pounds, he's immense. He was really the big standout. You look at him like, oh, boy. And then you see the mobility he has, didn't look overmatched in practices, had a solid technique, was a good anchor. And look, there's a lot of tools here. And the thing with that I wouldn't rule Guyton out on is, while he might not be as ready to go as some of the other offensive line prospects here in Mobile, I do think that he is someone that the Jets really need to keep an eye on. And the one thing I would say, too, is I know Funga is getting a lot of pub with the Jets, and I could see Funga going at the 10th pick. But if the Jets wanted to drop down a couple spots and get a second-round pick back, Guyton, I think, could be a plug-and-play right tackle, potentially a future starting left tackle, and I wouldn't hate it either. But I think he was a great person as well and really solidify that he's going to be a first-round pick, potentially even a top 15 pick in this upcoming draft. So we talked about the first round for the Jets. Let's go into rounds number 2 and 3, maybe even 4. Christian Haynes, interior offensive lineman out of UConn. One of the things the Jets need is durability. And the biggest thing with Haynes is this number, 3,000 snaps in college. He's incredibly durable. And he's always been an unbelievable run blocker. Sorry, I got a little tongue tied. But the thing that's really impressed me this year is how he's improved as a pass blocker. His technique has gone better. He's been a good anchor in the middle and really impressed in Mobile. And look, he plays with a nastiness. He is a nasty player that the Jets have not had. And look, the Jets need a little nasty streak on that offensive line. And one of the biggest things that happened, one of the biggest events in the whole thing was when you looked at this, Christian Haynes was doing a rep with Jordan Jefferson. And after the ref, where he basically locked him down, you could see Jefferson was getting pissed off and they were going back and forth. But I love that nasty streak from an offensive lineman. And look, maybe not an everyday starter right away, but could be a potential future starter. And here's the other thing: versatile, can play center, can play both guard positions. I know that it's a luxury to use a round 3 pick on someone that might not play, but given how the Jets offensive line and their injuries last year, they need to build as much depth as possible. And with a future starter here in Haynes, which I truly believe, I think he's someone the Jets have to value because of both the versatility and the eventual starting talent as well. So I know that this is probably going to be a stretch, but if you're new to the channel, I did a video. You can go check it out about how I think the Jets should consider all possibilities, and one of them is moving Joe Tippmann to guard. And the reason I said that was because of Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. I love this kid. He, to me, was the most impressive offensive lineman the entire week in Mobile. There's a chance he's going to be in round 1 pick, but by some chance, if the Jets get a round 2 pick and he's sitting there at the top of the second round, I would run to the table to draft him. You can either play him at center or a guard position. He is just has that great ability to anchor and pass protection, but I really love his ability to get to the second level. He has that athleticism to get up and get on a linebacker, has that punch in the run game. Nice balance of power and balance. It's rare among offensive linemen to have that. And look, I would love to see this pairing. If the Jets somehow get a second round pick, if they trade back, I would love this interior of Jackson Powers Johnson, AVT, and Joe Tippmann, and let them go eat. I think that would be something to really keep an eye on. Now, a little note, I haven't put Funga in this chat because, look, I think the Jets, he's in play at 10. I think I would rather take him a couple picks later, but I think he's a solid right tackle to start right away. I'm not trying to downplay the kid. I think he's third on my board. I wouldn't hate the Jets taking him at 10. But there's other options too. And look, I think Funga's been talked to death by a lot of Jets analysts, and I'm trying to give Jet fans a different perspective of other prospects. So that's why, if you're wondering why he's not on this list today, that's why. It's not that I don't see the Jets taking him. I'm just trying to look at other options that haven't been discussed. And really, one of the biggest things I look at too is you got to look in round 3. You got to look in round 3 for how the Jets can get better. And one of them is J.D. Bertrand, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. Yeah, I know and I understand that the Jets technically don't need a linebacker. I get that. And I just noticed my computer's getting a little low in the tooth on battery. So just humor me as I talk for a little bit. It's one of those days, guys, where unfortunately, technical difficulties and all that fun stuff. But J.D. Bertrand is someone that I really liked out of Notre Dame. And here's the thing. The Jets don't need a linebacker. I know it's not the most pressing need, but on day 3, if you are drafting smartly, what you need to do is be able to look at long-term needs. Now, as great as CJ Mosley has been, he's starting to get long in the tooth, and they need to try to find a replacement. Look, Bertrand could be a sneaky find on day 3. He's not the most explosive athlete, but the things I love about him, he's got great leadership intangibles. I could see him being a team captain down the road. He's someone that's always in the right position, is great following instructions. And look, he's not going to get hung out to dry. He's going to be someone that wins with positioning, wins with anticipation. And I do think he could be a potential starting middle linebacker down the road. So he is someone that, if I'm the Jets, I am highly high on, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm addressing that position. And look, another position, I know it's not the biggest need in the world, is going to be defensive tackle. Brandon Fisk was dominant. And for my money, he was the most dominant force on the defensive line all week. He was a menace. He was great in the game, a sack and a half. Actually got traded to Jeff Ulbricht's team because of the lack of defensive tackles. And look, I think he's going to be available potentially in round 3. And I know a lot of people would hate this pick, but here's the thing. The defensive tackle position outside of Quinnen Williams is incredibly thin. And they're going to lose some guys probably in free agency. And the thing is, if you lose Huff as well, you need to get creative in generating a pass rush. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from the edges. He's someone that can step in, be a potential day one starter, a nice pairing with Quinnen Williams on the inside. And look, I'm not saying in round 1 or 2, but round 3, or if you get an extra third round pick, I think he's someone to definitely keep an eye on. If he's there, he might go day 2. I mean, he really had a great week. But defensive tackle, if you really look at it, is probably the thinnest position on the entire defense. If the Jets have an opportunity to upgrade that significantly, I do think they have to. And of course, this wouldn't be the Jets without talking about wide receivers. So my final player that I had an eye on from the Senior Bowl was Ryan Flournoy, Southeast Missouri. And there's a lot of things I really liked about Flournoy. And one of the things is the size, 6'2", 205 pounds, really similar build to Corey Davis. And one thing that doesn't get talked about receivers a lot is their run blocking. And he did a really good job at run blocking, creating lanes for running backs, getting his hands on the defender. And look, I know it's not the most impressive thing, but that's something that I really admire. And it's something that it shows me that they're engaged on every single play. And you look at the size too, you'd think it'd be hard to create separation, but he was doing a great job with separation all week. He's an FCS player. I do think he's going to be there day 3 because, again, there's so many good receivers in this draft. There are so many great receivers. You're going to see players drop. And to me, if he's there on day 3, the Jets should run to the podium because he fits that guy as a 6'2", 205. He adds size to this receiving room. He adds a really good tool set, someone that can block in the running downs. And look, I think it might be a stretch to say he could develop into a number 2. But could I see him easily being a number 3 or a really good rotational piece in the wide receiving core? Absolutely. So those are my 12 prospects that I highlighted. Again, I really wanted to focus on guys that I think the Jets should look at, especially on day 3. And the other thing, too, with this whole process is I look at guys that the Jets, like you look, they have multiple picks on day 3. They only have 2 picks in the first 3 days. They have pick 10 and they have their first third-round pick. They don't have the second-round pick. Now, I know Funga I didn't have on this list, and it's not because I don't think he's a good prospect. He's the number 3 tackle on my board, but I think he's been talked to death. I think that the Jets need to look at being creative. That's why I have Guyton on this list because he's some of the Jets. Like, again, it all depends what the Jets grades are, but if they have, like, for example, Funga has an 87 grade and Guyton has an 84, 85 grade, and they're able to drop a couple spots, like let's say a Brock Bowers or one of the great receivers is there in a team saying, look, we'll go up and we'll give you a second-round pick back. This is such a deep draft class. If I'm the Jets, I'd have to consider that. They have to consider all options and put everything on the table for this team this year. And if they want to especially build this offensive line and build it quickly, the best way to do this is get as many picks as possible. Look, a lot can change this offseason. Could they get a second-round pick back for Huff? Could they get draft capital back for Huff? Could they get any picks back for Zach Wilson? Maybe even a 6. But again, if you get that 6th-round pick, it could lead to guys like I was just talking about, guys that are some FCS players that are playing in the Senior Bowl. There's a couple of intriguing pass rushers that I really liked, especially on day 3. I mean, especially Watts from UConn. Like, I just think that he is someone that I would definitely keep an eye on as well, especially as this process keeps going. But I really loved Guyton too, because, like, especially with the power. I mean, he has unique power on the outside and some bend and could be versatile, could play inside. Christian Haynes is someone I really like. Maybe not even as an everyday starter, but you're looking at Laken Tomlinson's contract and you're looking at guys that can play right away. I think he could be an okay guard right off the bat, but I do think he can develop. I mean, this is a really good offensive line class, and this is one of the things for the Jets that helps out. Sometimes when you come to a draft, the needs you have don't match the strength of the draft. And really the strengths of this draft right now, I think, are the offensive line position, which the Jets need. I think it's the wide receiver position, which the Jets need. And you could even make a case for quarterback. And look, the reason I brought up Rattler and I brought up Hartman was because I could see them being there on day 2. I could see them being there day 3. Now, Rattler, I think, is going to go in round 2. Jets are likely going to need a round 2 pick, but if there's a chance, like let's say he's hovering around the 50 pick mark and the Jets are sitting there top of the 3rd round and they want to kick in an extra pick to go up and get him, I wouldn't hate it. I know a lot of Jet fans would be upset probably, but if the Jets truly believe that he can be a developmental quarterback and sit behind Aaron Rodgers, and I think Rattler, the best thing for him to do is sit behind him. I mean, he's 23 years old, has a lot of upside, has a lot of great ability. I would look into doing that because it's so hard to find great quarterbacks. But then you can also find guys like Hartman on day 3 who, again, I think the biggest thing that's going to work for him is that he doesn't have the biggest arm to push the ball down the field. And he also doesn't have, he's also older. He's going to be 25. But when teams are looking for that quote unquote Brock Purdy type of player, I think Hartman kind of fits that bill. I mean, Purdy doesn't have the biggest arm, but he was a smart kid who could make the easy throws and get the throws out with anticipation. And that's why I see Hartman doing. And look, I thought Hartman, like I watched the Senior Bowl. Everyone's talking about Penix and Bo Nix. Like I didn't see that much separation of all these quarterbacks, which when you look at a guy like Rattler and Hartman is an interesting thing because if I don't see that much separation and people are talking Penix as a top 15 pick and you can get those guys later on the draft, I think you have to explore those options. And there's a lot of good options and intriguing options for the Jets. And I bring up the defense a lot and people are going to say, oh, the Jets, they don't need to add defensive pieces. Well, if you want this team to still be a top 5 defense, they're going to have to find ways to generate pass rush. They're going to have to address the interior of the defensive line and eventually the linebacking core. I know that you have a guy like Quincy Williams still in his prime, but CJ Mosley's in his 30s now. You're going to have to look to eventually replace him and find that next linebacker. And really, that's one of those positions where it's not an immediate need, but a long-term need for this team. It absolutely is. But look, it's going to be an interesting draft. It's going to be a lot to talk about. I will be doing my mock draft soon. My 3-round mock draft will be coming out soon. Again, I wait till the end of free agency really to do this, but I will start doing the 3-round mock drafts for the Jets in the coming days because I know you guys love that stuff. And we will definitely be doing that. I also be looking at potential trade ups and trade downs for the Jets in the draft. And I also be doing general NFL draft content about some of my favorite prospects, who's moving up the board and who's moving down. Again, guys, if you're joining us after the live stream, please make sure to put a comment in there below, and I will answer them in the next video. But again, guys, this was our Senior Bowl standout video. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, here on Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.